back, listeners, to the Mindful Living show. I'm your host, Sana, as always, and this is the space where presence is power and peace isn't something that we chase, it is something we remember. Now, today we are diving into a paradox that might just flip our entire approach to healing and growth. Now, hear me out. What if trying too hard to be at peace is exactly what's keeping you from it? And what if the key to rewiring addiction, anxiety, the inner turmoil, those inner whirlwinds within you, it isn't control, but curiosity? Listeners, my guest today is someone who doesn't just speak about transformation, she embodies it. A self realization coach and founder of Realize and the Realization Hub, she has turned personal struggle into a powerful mission to help others shift from surviving to sovereign living with roots in mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and resilience building. Her work empowers people to stop outsourcing their peace and start embodying their own truth. So, whether you are navigating recovery, you're navigating burnout, or you're simply craving for a more aligned life, this conversation offers a soulful recalibration. So, let's unpack the paradox, explore radical self awareness, and challenge everything you think you know about healing. And listeners, meet my incredible guest, Florence Doisneau. So, Florence, welcome to this show, and I'm really, really excited for our conversation.
Well, thank you, Sana. I'm so happy to be here today. And yes, you're right. This is such a wonderful theme subject to tackle because there are quite a few hurdles along the way, and I feel like I've hit a few in my on my own path. So I'm in good place to talk about them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I believe personal journeys, lived experiences, um, there cannot be any more valid proof than them because that kind of gives that authenticity, that soul to whatever we want to share with the world out there. And that's where I would like to begin this conversation from, Florence. So before we talk about the mindfulness trap or the journey from healing addiction through self realization and everything around that, if you would like to share a bit about your journey, how did you come to understand everything around mindfulness, around self awareness, and from where did this paradox come?
The first fundamental piece, or I would say main insight that I got was that the journey inward is an is an infinite one. There is no end to the depth at which we can dive. And so, therefore, one trap that I fell in the past was somehow believed in some kind of finish line. When I get beyond this point, I'll be all right. And I discovered over time that there's no such thing as a finish line. There's certainly, I would say, maybe plateaus that I've experienced. And along the way, there were definitely some more comfortable places than others, but for the most part, it's an ever unfolding journey.
Mm, it is definitely continuous. It is. Because, more often we resort to quick fixes or something that has uh, an endpoint.
Mm.
But then, in pursuit of that endpoint, we um, forget to realize that healing, especially, it's a continuous journey. It's a non-linear journey. It can be messy. It can be of its own. No one has the same trajectory or journey. So, thank you for sharing that, Florence. And with that, let's talk about the mindfulness trap. Now, we all know around about mindfulness. It's one of the buzzwords, especially in the
Mm.
wellness. And it's about presence. It's about self-awareness. But then you often speak about it, allowing rather than forcing. So, if you can explain how this act of striving for peace can actually prevent us from feeling it.
To me, the best analogy that was offered to me was the one of water. When
Mm,
water is left alone, it's still. And the moment the wind blows on the surface of a lake, or if you come a hold of a glass of water and shake it, of course, then the water is moved, disturbed, so to say. And what I have come to see is that the mind is very much akin to water in that way. When
mm,
we allow ourselves to sit in a quiet space, the mind just stills and becomes more quiet and calm. And when we start thinking about something in a forceful way, in an effortful way, then the mind begins to feel more chaotic. And that's one thing that we all do. I know I've definitely done it time and time again, and I still catch myself to this day doing it. When I'm faced with a problem, I can have the tendency to want to think about it more thoroughly because I think that my solution is on the other side of a deep and thorough thinking process. When really what I have found time and time again to be true is that by allowing some time for my mind to settle down, oftentimes solutions kind of just surface on their own. Insights will come, and it will be a much more enjoyable process, at least a more peaceful one.
mm. I love that analogy. And that really makes me picturize a clear flowing river. It is an ocean, but it's so clear that we can see the riverbed. Um, that's a beautiful analogy, Florence. And yes, in fact, it happens with me as well that whenever there is some kind of problem or a huge life changing event happening, um, however it is small at any level, it kind of rattles my mind. I'm always, getting into that rabbit hole of anxiety, looking out for solutions or thinking about possible results or outputs. But then when we kind of, have that quietness, that stillness, and we go with the steps, the process, I think somehow we do get that, do get to see the solutions or the horizon. So yeah, that's a really beautiful way of putting it.
And there's a lot of wisdom in the wherever it's possible to sleep on a decision. If I'm not held to make a decision in the moment, being
Mhm.
given some space to let it just sit and pick it up back with a fresher perspective or a refreshed mind the next day, I find that to really yield some pretty good results oftentimes.
I agree. I agree. Some people would say that you're running away from problems, but you are just kind of, um, uh, ignoring it. But that's not true. That's not at all true. I am aware that there's definitely a problem out there, but I'm just trying to uh, blank everything and kind of, channelize everything. Uh,
Mhm,
have myself in that space to think about the way out, the
mhm.
possible, solutions. So yeah, and why do what do you think is the reason behind this mindfulness paradox, Florence? I mean, is it like the striving is rooted more in the cultural conditioning, or is it something deeper, like more innate?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I wouldn't be able to make an affirmed answer on that. From what I see, I think it's all of the above. It's probably written in our DNA on some level. It's very much also, I think, reinforced with nowadays culture, which is very action oriented. Ultimately, I think we really, because yes, there is a lot of value in acting um, the our ancestors were not fed with ease. They had to go get their food. The person who just sat around, well, starved. That's a very that's very cliche, but it's true that a life without action is is doomed to fall into dissolution. But our culture is very much, and I think I say our culture, granted there are so many different cultures all around the world, but I think that to some degree, at least the cultures um, I've been exposed to, share a commonality of um, upholding the proactiveness and the go-getting attitude. And yes, there is definitely value in rewarding action because action is necessary. But in order for it to truly be optimized, it has to come in balance with stillness, quiet, and calm. That's one of the beautiful things I have learned in my yoga practice is that as much as we move through poses and ask of our body to be in that movement, our mind to be directed in certain ways, it's also it has to come in balance with um, allowing the unfolding, allowing ourselves to observe and recognize and see what is unfolding moment to moment. So a person who, let's say, today would be characterized as type A, and I've noticed that when I was teaching classes, have no issue in really being pushed hard on the mat. But the moment you invite them to sit still or lay down, they kind of feel lost because at that point, there might be a lot of noise showing up at the level of the mind. And that quiet is oftentimes very off putting for people because, again, we've been so encouraged to take action. And I think it's the same way people come to a meditation practice or they want to do something mindfully. They are very they are very attentive to what to do next. What's the next step? What is the process? And very little are they noticing or allowing or feeling into the moment?
Hmm. That makes sense, Guns. That makes sense. I would sometimes say for myself as well, and many of my friends. I mean, and it's natural, especially when we talk about A-type personality, that if meditation, if they are closing their eyes or just sitting in silence, they wouldn't be able to do that. They wouldn't
Mhm.
be able. Um, and now let's talk about self-realization, Florence. You say that uh, a lot about healing addiction through self-realization. Now, it's a very powerful shift from what we see traditionally, the disease model. So, how does this approach help rewire the brain differently?
Well, there's again a balance to strike. When it comes to addiction, yes, there are a number of, say, strategies and processes that we can put in place in everyday life to build new habits.
Okay.
Um, at the same time, and I think that's maybe a layer that's not so much visited or not so much paid attention to, is what is going on the inside for a person. And well, we can talk about addiction as in, of course, substance abuse, but there are also all the addictions on on, let's say, more of an emotional level, on a behavioral level,
Mm-hmm.
where it's not so much we are addicted to a substance, but there's a person, we find our comfort even in behaviors or states
Yeah.
that are in the long run destructive, that are in the long run harmful. So maybe a person is unknowingly addicted to fear, addicted to anger, addicted to um, shots of adrenaline. Who knows? So there are so many different things that we find comfort into, but that lead us on the path of being drained, or at least being harmed. So when we are able to see that these are things that we do with our mind, that's not things that we are. That's why I take issue the the phrasing addictive personalities. It kind of, I think, it can lead to a mistake of thinking that some people are prone to addiction
Mhm.
more than others because of their personality, because of a trait, because of who they are. Because a lot of
Mhm.
people assimilate personality to true self, but these are two different things. There's the core self, the true self, which is that impermanent part of us. That's the part in self realization that we aim to tap into, to allow to move through us and express itself through us. And then there's what I have come to see and call the ego self, as Sid Banks would talk about as well. The ego self is not bad or good. It's an accumulation of all the thinking that we have.
Yeah.
Who- The mental, the mental space is not who we are. It's a layer around, or however we want to represent it in our mind, but it's a different realm than the realm of that core self, true self. And in that realm of ego self, that's where we store all the things that we think about ourselves. And if we think about those things on a regular basis, it becomes automatic. And by the point it's automatic, it becomes something we identify with and relate to. And we call that personality. So why do we get addicted to things? Because they bring us a certain level of comfort. And then the brain gets wired to make that automatic so that we can even prevent the discomfort before it even occurs. So again, it might be a drug of choice, it could be a behavior.
Mhm.
Ultimately, when we come back to our core self, to the truth of ourselves, we realize that we are not that behavior. We are not that trait of personality. That I am not a smoker. I am a person who smokes. It's different, you know? So when we're feeling and really experiencing that distinction, not just being told and intellectually understand it, but when we really experience that space between who we are and the things we do, the things we think, the things we think automatically. That alone is is enough to put more space between us and the behavior, between us and that way of thinking of us. And therefore it diminishes the power this thought has over us.
Well, I think the difference here, it's a very thin line. As you mentioned that I'm not a smoker. I am a person who smokes. I think there's a huge difference between these two sentences,
Mhm.
and it connects with your true identity. Like uh, I think self realization. It's like a homecoming.
Yeah.
Um, And that's what I think, what so many people in recovery are hungry for, not just sobriety. I mean, it can be substances, it can be behavioral patterns, but it's about sovereignty. So let's talk about the way out, Florence, before we wrap up. So, uh, how, especially when we talk about the way out, you have your realization catalyst program. So how do you help people redefine who they are beyond their pain, trauma, their addiction or behavior? I mean, what are some practices, or what kind of approach do you follow?
I invite the best I can people to reconnect with their innate peace, their innate wellness.
Okay.
There are a few different things as far as I can see. The role I can humbly play in relation to other people is be in that wellness myself. And I feel like we all act as tuning forks around each other. So ultimately, if I show up in a space, in a particular state, or in a way of being, then chances are I can maybe invite other people to join me at that level. Then the other thing too is um, kind of helping people release the grip they have around their
Mm.
thinking. Just give them a little bit more room for their exploration, for their insights to show up. And that I find that group setting is a great place for that because it's not just that one-on-one connection, it's
Mhm.
individuals coming together, and sometimes the way one person phrases something
Mhm.
just hits the mark beautifully for someone else or helps someone to realize something on a deeper level. And I always found that combined energies together tend to amplify and multiply. It's a very it's just a very interesting phenomena. I don't really control. I don't control it. I just notice that people coming together, gathering together in a paradoxical way, when an intention is when it's done around a certain intention of deeper introspection and deeper let's say connection, it it allows for this journey to be smoother and faster, like a sitting in a room with other people to meditate or practicing yoga together. And ultimately, it's so important to remember that the all the practices that we try along the way are they all have their potency, they all have their value. But at the end of the day, they are only vehicles that facilitate our journey. But that's essentially what we're connecting, what we're wanting to connect with is always here and now. It's not something that we acquire after years of practice. It's already here. And I think it's important not to confuse the vehicle. I have done it myself. I have caught myself doing my morning practice and going through the motions of it because it had become automatic, because I wasn't really in it. I was maybe distracted by other things or just just playing autopilot when I noticed that it allowed me to uh, it allowed me to reset myself to make more out of my practice and enter that space with curiosity, with openness. And that's what I invite people to do in group settings and other. And I find that it's oftentimes quite miraculous what comes through for people.
Totally, totally. I think you really highlighted the importance of community, other than not only the lived experiences, but then shared experiences. And that is so much needed right now, Florence, to be honest, for every one of us. Um, and before we wrap up, just it could be a bit of an uncomfortable question, but and I would like to put this forward that now some critics would argue that in the wellness space, stillness and calm, it has been over glorified, like making them the new gold standards. So, do you think that labeling certain states as higher, it creates new forms of judgment or shame?
Think it's important to call a spade a spade. I have no doubt that I function better in a space of peace and calm than when I'm overwhelmed and anxious. So, yeah, I would say that for me, there is higher value in being in a state of well being than in a state of discomfort. Now, it's not to place judgment on a person over, oh, this person is better than this one because, hey, they are in a higher state of wellness because they are at a higher level of consciousness. The truth is that our level of consciousness fluctuates throughout the day. So catch me in a good moment, I'll be golden. But then there are moments in the day where, yeah, not so much. But yeah, I think it's important to recognize that there are places where it's fair to say that we thrive, and there are places where it's justified to say that it's detrimental for us to stay and be in. That would be my answer to your question. I think it's a great one too because as much as the conversation around mindfulness wants to be open and wants to invite people um, to get to something meaningful and wholesome. It's not um, it's not immune to its judgments and criticism. Um, so that's one thing to be aware of. But to qualify a higher level of consciousness as it being a judgment of value over people, I think again, it's fair to say that yeah, it's good to aim high. It's good to aim to something that nurtures us and benefits us.
Okay, okay. And I so uh, resonate with what you said, Florence. And you know what? It's not always possible to run away from the noise, from the clutter, from problems, and just trying hard to achieve that calmness or stillness. I think to me, mindfulness is more about I think the most common example that I have actually learned through so many conversations on mindfulness is you are sitting in your car or you are in the traffic. Everybody is honking. I mean, it's all noise, and naturally we tend to be more frustrated and angry. We are late for work. We are late to go back to our homes. But then you are then also kind of um, in that calmness to not react and be at peace, trying to be at peace. I think to me that is actually mindful anger or mindful chaos that I would love to call. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It takes time, but it definitely is possible.
Yeah, but I think yeah, that's true that the mindfulness practices that we endeavor to involve ourselves into in our lives, it has value if its benefits carry over to our everyday life. And so for me to practice yoga in the morning, it has to do with also being, not forcing myself into a non-reactive non-reactive state, but to be calm even under pressure, even in difficult moments, even surrounded by chaos and noise. And ultimately, I think that the more we find ourselves simply noticing our own reactions to things, the less we get taken for a ride by our emotions and feelings. I may be sitting in traffic, initially noticing some frustration emerging, and just noticing it in and of itself is helping to dispel the emotional charge that comes with the frustration. Then I can sink back into, being okay with it. I'm stuck in traffic. There's nowhere for me to go right now. It is what it is. And if
Sure.
someone's expecting me, I can reach out to them, let them know what's going on, and that's all I can do. That's really all. That's all that's in my power at this moment.
Yeah, true. Great, great, Florence. This was such to me a very thoughtful, kind of a poignant conversation because I could reflect back to so many personal moments. So if our listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about self-realization and about your work as well, what would be the best way?
The easiest is to go to my website. It's realize with a Z, realizeunlimited.com. And from there, they can look at what kind of work I do, and also reach out directly to me if they have any questions. I'm always happy also to share resources that have helped me along the way. So, by all means, I invite anyone who resonated with what we talked about today to reach out through my website.
Definitely. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes for our listeners. And Florence, what a powerful conversation. You not only shared your wisdom, but you have definitely reminded us that real transformation, it isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who we already are. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sana. It was wonderful talking with you today.
Me too. Thank you. And to all the listeners, the beautiful, mindful listeners out there, if you have been trying to fix yourself, maybe this conversation today is your permission to stop and feel yourself instead. Maybe peace isn't found in effort, but in exhale. And maybe your pain isn't something to shame or silence, but it's a teacher whispering truths you are finally ready to hear. If this episode stirred something within you, pause, breathe, and sit with it. And definitely make sure to connect with Florence. Just refer to the show notes along with this podcast on your favorite platform. And until next time, stay mindful, stay curious, and stay you. Thank you.